Good idea.
Can I sing?
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Social Media Breakfast of Houston. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. I'm so glad to be here today with all of you to talk with Sherry Thomas. I'm very excited about this event, and it is Valentine's Day. Woohoo! And you know, us marketers, our love language is data. Well, at least it is for Sherry and I. When I first met Sherry, we started talking about what she was doing and what I was doing. And honestly, we found that we were like the same person with the same brain. And so we had a great time. So I wanted to bring it to you and let you hear what we're doing. But first, I do want to just go through a few things, including our sponsors for today. You can move the slide so we can see who they are. First of all, the Ion. Could we give the Ion a big hand? Also, could somebody shut the door so that we don't mess up they have an event right outside the door. But the Ion is an amazing innovation hub for Houston. And how many of you have been here before? Yeah, so many have been before. It's great here because it's run by Rice, and their whole focus is on education. So they are our sponsor for the year. They're sponsoring us this space, and I'm really, for one, very grateful to them. So thank you, Ion. Yay! Also, just so you know, this whole area is sort of new. This back part. So if you do events, this is a great place to rent out to do your events as well. So make sure you keep them in mind, especially since they're so community oriented. And you can see it's easy to get in. There's a coffee shop upstairs. I did bring food today. I am right now sponsoring the food. So Zoetica Media, yay, Zoetica Media. And so Smart Social Mastery and Mighty Strategic, which is Jennifer in the corner, is sponsoring the coffee. So thank you. Trish Badger is our photography sponsor this year. And so thanks to her. And then I kept Impact Hub up there because we are absolutely still connected with Impact Hub. We did not leave Impact Hub. I'm still a member of Impact Hub. We use their Eventbrite for these events. And so we are definitely connected there. So I'm really grateful to Grace and her team for that. So thank you, Impact Hub, as well. Awesome. The next page is our SMBHOU link. Yeah, you just have to click enter. Yeah, there you go. And so all you have to do is go to smbhou.com, and we have everything on that page. So if you've not visited our website, I really recommend that you do. It has all of what's coming up. It has all of the old events that we've done here. It recorded. You can actually search the site for any topic that you want, and you will be able to pull up a video where we talked about it. And I have like 8 or 9 years of videos on there. So there's a lot. So you can go back in the time machine and see what happened in Facebook in 2016. It's really fun. Also, you can see how bad the production value was when I first started. Yes. Yeah, I used to bring a snowball and put it up next to the speaker and just run my phone on a tripod. So we've come a long ways, people. Yeah. So here we are. I love you and I love this group. We'll have our 16 years in May of this year. So woo-hoo. We celebrated 15 last year in a big way. We'll just kind of go, hey, it's 16 today. That's it in May. I hope you come back. So, all right. That being said, hello, Sherry. Oh yeah. Make sure you're on. Yeah. You're on mute. I'm just kidding. It's like
physically
Zoom.
On mute.
It's like Zoom.
Leave it to me.
It's on Zoom. Yeah. So welcome and thank you for coming. I am really excited to be talking to you about what I have on the sheet because you are what you call a self-proclaimed digital anthropologist.
Yes.
And why I love that immediately is because I wrote a blog post. Like I think I sent it to you way back in 2009 or something, and talked about anthropology as what we should think about for social media. So I love that you took that the next step. You do cultural research and technology to decode what drives customer behavior. You've consulted for like unbelievable brands, Nike, and the State Department. I don't know. You've like scary kind of things. So she knows about data, State Department, and social intelligence. So you're really about turning customer insights into meaningful action, though, which I love about what you do. So welcome to Sherry.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
We're going to talk about a lot of technical things, so don't worry. We have a QR code for you at the end that Sherry provided where you can scan and get her remarks and kind of a little bit of a handout about what we're talking about today. So don't worry. Take notes, of course, but we do have you covered. All right, so we can have a great conversation. Well, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cami.
Sure. So I want to talk about where you came from. Why data? Why are you focusing on data in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. It wasn't on purpose.
Okay, tell us the story.
It was an accidental career, I call it. Basically, I was a tech writer out of college. I started a master's degree and kind of burned out, took some time off, did some technical writing back in the .com boom. And then those of you who are of the same generation will remember that was a big boom and a lot of great work that was out there. And we were all like swimming in the money at that time. So I did a bunch of tech writing, and in that process learned how to use some, database work and stuff. But my undergrad is English. My master's degree is international affairs with a focus on Middle East culture and religion. So technology was the last thing on my mind. But unfortunately, because I learned just enough to be dangerous while tech writing, I became the tech girl for every other project I ever worked. So I did some training for the UK government, traveled around with that. I really just wanted to travel. People, what they believe, cultures are my passion. So kind of like anything I could get into that put me on a plane, I was in. So technology has done that since then. So I've been to Iraq as a cultural advisor to the military using my master's degree. Of course, I got there and found out that they were storing brigade content on local SharePoint sites for each brigade, and there was probably 6 brigades just in Baghdad. So anyways, just saying, there was a lot of data problems that were preventing us from getting our work done. So I ended up sort of fixing that problem and then became unintentionally the SharePoint girl. If you guys know SharePoint, I was Sherry SharePoint for a good 10 years of my career, you guys. So
that's great. That's great.
So anyways, from there I went to Federal Reserve Bank, EY, Deloitte, all that fun stuff. And then at EY is when I went to Nike, and I was just implementing a platform, and essentially the pandemic hit 4 months later. And we were a strategic, basically, partnership for the C-suite during the pandemic. So we did a lot of like acceleration of the capability. So that was really fun. Terrible pandemic, fun work. And then after that, basically built out kind of like EY's go-to-market for social intelligence. And so if you think about marketing, I'm a brand new baby in marketing. What I am is like a cultural sort of anthropologist, because even in all my tech career, I was designing technology to work for humans and designing, basically training humans to work with technology. So essentially, it's just human behavior is my passion. It's what I do. And I bring that to social intelligence. And then for those of you who are saying, what the heck is social intelligence? We're going to get into that.
Oh, yes. We're going to go deep. So that being said, no, you're good. We're spinning around, so we're going to be like 3-year-olds, like we're going to spin back and forth here. Tell me a little bit about that, because what we're going to talk about today is using existing data to get insights. So could you just define what we're about to talk about so that we can go into the depth on that from there?
Yes. So if we think about data, I'm going to put it in 3 categories for you guys. Think about it in terms of, again, we're talking about customer data. It can include internal data if it has to do with the customer. So what you're talking about is behavioral data. So behavioral data is someone who clicks here. So all your web analytics are going to be behavioral, right? Because you're seeing like the path that people are doing, but you're getting that in data because they're clicking physically. So it's behavioral. If you're getting solicited, that's your surveys, right? So you're saying your focus groups, you're asking, you're prompting people to give you information. And what we're talking about is social data. Social data is unsolicited raw conversations that people are talking about online that are not prompted by anyone, right? Unless they're responding to like a prompt or a poll on X or whatever. But what we're talking about here is sort of all 3 of those sort of coming together as a full view of the customer. But my part is kind of why I've referred to myself as a social spy, which is, I only did Department of Defense work for, a year or so, but
No,
it
brand
kind
it,
of
brand
applies.
it, brand it,
Yeah,
brand it.
social spy, I'm taking it. But
Take it on.
it's better than SharePoint Sherry.
Agreed. That's a bad place to be
Yeah.
stuck. Whew, SharePoint. Anyway, it's still out there. So if you really want to come back,
Yeah,
it's
no,
all good.
I
Yeah.
can do it in a pinch if I have to.
So part of what I think a lot of businesses are already doing is they're taking existing tools, and we'll talk about tools in a minute, and they are pulling down sentiment analysis and sentiment data, and the machine is like crunching it for them and putting it together and like, here's the sentiment. But what I found with those is they're often not correct. So how are you correcting for like, hey, you're bad? I mean, some of the things the kids are saying today sound like they're saying you're good, and it's not good. Just so you know, I have teenagers. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, yay. No, Mom.
Like, bless your heart.
Yeah, sort of a little bit, but in teenager speak. So my question then is like, how are you, dealing with that? So are you just using machine learning? Talk about what you're using.
All right. So
right
this is I love this question because everyone talks about AI and
Mhm.
AI being amazing and intelligent and all this kind of stuff. So AI plays a huge role. The technology we use is AI. It's machine learning.
Yeah, I didn't even put that in the promo. I didn't say this is an AI talk.
This is
Just
AI.
thank me later.
Yeah, it's something called natural language processing. And what they do is they train the platforms to understand language. So it'll even pick apart kind of the subject, direct object, verb, all that kind of stuff in parts of sentence, right? So, and it picks up essentially for every language as well. So if you're thinking about how people talk online, think about emojis, think about shortening words, taking vowels out of words completely, all this kind of stuff that's going on.
Teen slang.
Slang, yeah, we're at the baby stage of AI, right? And AI is still learning our languages, and it's learning more every day from all of us globally. But right now, it's in its infancy, so it doesn't know that on, for example, a sports post, someone puts a goat emoji. It has no idea what a goat is. It's not going to say that's positive. It's going to say like, I don't know, or even negative. So, or like if
neutral.
Yeah, if like something Kobe pops up and people are commenting, cry faces. That's positive, actually. So
yes,
again, there's limitations to AI today. So I think that's weirdly a relief to a lot of people, like to know that like you still need a human interaction. So there's a lot that you need to do to touch the data yourself to get it to the insights piece. Sorry, I went on a little bit.
No, I'm looking what's next. I agree. So one of the things that's interesting about that is that you're using like kind of, big tools, but could you talk about the tools you're using now? And then we're going to get into do it yourself. Don't worry. I've done some DIY on this, so we're good.
Yeah.
So what tools are you using right now to pull this data?
Yeah, so there's a suite of tools. As a consultant, I have to be well-versed at all of them. And well, I am as much as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be able to walk into any place and use whatever tool that they have. I personally use Meltwater and DTAG Analytics. So those are the two platforms that I currently use. And do you want
DTAG, go into detail.
So social listening technology. So these companies have the API agreements with, X, Facebook, Instagram. So they're managing that data flow situation for you, unless you're piping in your internal data. But essentially, they kind of broker all of the data deals with the platforms, and then you kind of sign on and take whatever platforms that they offer. That's kind of the matrix that you have to look at when you're shopping for these. And then they basically bring in all the data, create these dashboards that have sentiment analysis, volume, topic wheels, all this kind of stuff. Then that's where the human comes in, and you kind of have to dig through these dashboards and know the context of the people that are talking, so you know what I call what thread to pull. But DTAG Analytics is a tech platform that essentially is a bit customized social listening. It's a little bit more like deliberate about where we go get the data from. So instead of just you get what you get, we're going to go find the right appropriate data, and then you're going to do an industrial filter on that. So if you're a pharma, it's automatically going to take that unstructured data and it's going to categorize it according to pharma. So it's going to give you comorbidities, it's going to give you symptoms, it's going to give you all that stuff. And it was developed by language experts as well, so in 31 languages globally in local slang. So it's very strong in that. So it's got pharma, it's got retail. I think we got about 12 different industrial data packs. And then there's some Gen AI on the back end. So if you get a dashboard and you like what it's saying and you're like, hey, I see a negative sentiment message popping up about my brand, you can actually say, generate a marketing plan for the next 2 months to combat this message, this negative message that's getting out there.
And when you say Gen AI, you're talking Open AI, or could you talk about that, what you're talking about?
Yeah, Gen AI is a whole different type of AI. So the AI I've been talking about is machine learning and natural language processing. And that's where AI just learns how we speak. Gen AI is kind of what we're familiar with, which is give me an image of a pig flying, then it's going to generate that image. It's anything that it generates for you. So the Gen AI piece on the back end is where it's generating a full marketing plan for you, depending on what platforms you want it for.
Great. And so that's the enterprise method. And those are not cheap tools. I mean, we'll be honest, right? So like how much would you spend on something like that?
Oh gosh.
As a company?
Depending on size, I mean, they all do pricing. Yeah, range is good. I would say between 8,000 to 50,000
a year, right? Yeah,
a year.
Okay.
So these are SaaS platforms. They're usually an annual subscription.
Yeah. So they're not cheap. So what do you do? Like, what do you do as like a more, modest budget person like myself? So I've had some stuff like this, and we talked about some of the things I've done, but could you talk a little bit about the do-it-yourself method that you might take on if you were like, here, I'm like a nonprofit and I'm like trying to figure out like what people are talking about this topic out there? What would you do?
Yes. So in the sheet that I sent out to you guys, this is all in there, by the way.
Yes.
So if you don't have a social listening platform or an agency that does that for you, basically let's look at these buckets of data that you can look at. And this is sort of, it's a piece that is often missing from content strategy or content creators. And by content, I know I talk a lot about social, but I do mean messaging in general for a company, because we're talking about risk messaging, we're talking about corporate communications, we're talking about, so even though I'm talking about it in terms of social content, think about it in terms of any content, because this is, think about my background, I'm looking for messaging in general. So essentially what we're looking at is comments. So if you've got a lot of social content, people have comments in there, that's a rich piece of data. All of these unstructured are informational and interesting at best, but what you want to do is pull that data into a different platform and look at it in a different way. We're looking for pattern recognition. So comments first. The next layer is mentions, comments. So if it's a campaign and you've got a hashtag or whatever that might be, you're going to obviously pull that in. So any UGC mentions is what we're calling that, user generated content. That's kind of like an earned media for those of you marketing heads. It's basically you launched a campaign, someone picked up your hashtag and posted something, fresh, and that's a sign of
also media.
Yes, media, exactly. So any kind of media, anything I do this kind of research for myself. And then we're going to look at like the brand in general. So what you don't want to do is get so heads down on a campaign that you're trying to sell, this package or whatever, and then you miss what's happening at the brand level, because there could be events, there could be things that pop off in the media that you don't know about. We come across this all the time. I just did this for a major bank where with their data, they knew this much, and they couldn't figure out why their survey sentiment was declining, and they could not, no matter where they went, they couldn't find that answer. They came to us. I went and found it very quickly. It was very easy to find the reputational damage that was happening that was causing people to leave that bank. So that happened literally and recently in the past few months. So what we're saying is look at the brand level. As you go to do content, there might be something that you're attached to that you don't even know about that you could jump on and get more traction with. And then finally, industry. So this is one that a lot of people forget to do. But when I'm trying to sell, so I sell social listening. If I'm trying to sell a competitor benchmark report, I'm going to go look at who else is selling it. I'm going to go look at what they're selling, how they're selling it, what they're doing, who's the most engaged with, who's got the people that I want, right? So I need to go like, copy what they're doing or identify exactly, not copy what they're doing. Sorry, take that back immediately. What I mean is,
don't do that.
You have to start kind of, once you get all that data together, and I kind of created a little template for you guys, but essentially you're looking for that pattern recognition, and here's things to look for, right? So I always go to like negative, everything negative, and then you start categorizing, and what you'll start to see is the same 3 topics, so the same 2 things that people tend to complain about over time. This is going to be data that gets stronger over time. And then same thing for positive topics. What things are people talking about? Like, you think you're mid-range price, but people are like, oh my God, this is so cheap, in the comments or whatever. Then you need to talk more about how you're cheaper than other people in your next messaging, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about in getting into those details. And what you want to do is cross-reference all of those. So in the document that I'm going to be sending you guys, I have the elements to look for and track. So it'll help you kind of look for those patterns and look and see. And what you start to see is behavioral changes. So I once had a team that said, what's the best sequence for Instagram stories? We have 6-slide Instagram story, we have a series that we're doing once a week for the next 5 weeks. What's the best sequence? Like, we can't really figure out what's happening. So what I did is I pulled down all of you have tap forward, tap back, clicks, all that kind of stuff, swipe up. I put all that in like a little table, and I just looked for patterns, and very quickly a pattern emerged. And I was able to recommend, in your first slide it should be this, and your second slide it should be this, and we immediately saw the retention going up. So that's kind of what we're talking about, is getting to that sort of pattern recognition level. So even though you're in the comments, don't get stuck in the comments, you're looking for themes, right?
Yeah. So, and that's, I know you're all like with your wide eyes. I see them out there. You're like, how do we do that? So let's just go back up on the data again.
Sorry.
It was wonderful. So how do you get that data if you don't have a tool like you have?
Yes. Sorry. That was your original question.
No, it's okay. Back to it.
You guys can tell I kind of am obsessed with this whole,
that's great.
entire industry,
We can talk all day.
It took me 20 years to find it. So
yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. But essentially what you're going to look for is, obviously, if you're manual scraping, we've all searched Twitter, we've all searched TikTok, we've all searched Instagram. So things that you want to watch for, and I know hashtags are controversial. They come and go. Like every couple of years.
Speaking of hashtags,
no hashtags.
I'm inserting an ad. Hashtag SMBHOU. So like anything you hear today, could you put it out with hashtag SMBHOU?
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, please.
I'm back to the regular programming.
SMBHOU. Okay. Anyways, basically you can do those manual searches, but again, what you want to see is keywords that people tend to gather around. Like peanut butter. SMBHOU. Yes. If you're looking for like a peanut butter brand, you want to look for like jams to see what people are pairing. Like you want to kind of see what's trending online in your industry. So you want to look at like competitors, that kind of thing. And the hashtags are a way of people finding each other online, and people on Instagram. And this is where I'm saying, like, be careful with hashtags because they can go crazy. But there are some hashtags on Instagram, for example, and X, that people follow the hashtag. So anything that gets posted that's hashtag social strategy or whatever, it's going to show up.
Yeah. And I'll say this for just to insert this because it's very new. Instagram just stopped letting you follow hashtags anymore, but people will still use them, right? So you can click on it and search. So how would you grab that data?
I thought I saw something that was different from that yesterday. But anyways, go ahead.
They took it out. You can't follow them anymore. Yeah. Says Missouri.
Well, anyways, yes, you can still search by a hashtag to pull in all the content,
And would you just copy paste it?
How would you do it? There's a few different ways you can scrape. There's a few different websites that will scrape for you, and you can export those. I can give you a couple afterwards if you're curious about that. They do have some free apps that are minimal.
Freemium.
We're talking, freemie, or even like $10 a month or something like that. So it's very affordable. So there are apps that can do that. Of course, there's manual, but then, if you have a techie head, then you have a Python scrape or something like that. That's way above my head. But essentially for each platform, it really is a different kind of search, but there's a lot of elbow grease involved, which is why they have platforms to do.
I mean, I've done a lot of like copy paste. I'll be honest, like going to Reddit and looking for a topic and then copy paste all of what people are saying. That's very insightful sometimes.
I do have an app that you can use for Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube.
Okay, well, we'll grab that to you. And those of you who are listening online, just sign up for the what we're going to give you in a minute, and we'll get that back to you. Also, leave a comment. We'll drop in the comments later. Anyway, keep going. So we've got our data. Now what?
Okay, so again, you're looking for those topics. I always start with sentiment. Sentiment always.
Do they go down into Excel?
Yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry. You're going into Excel, and basically what you want to look for is if you're looking at the content, and as you're putting it in Excel, or they export to Excel in this tool I'll recommend. There's a few out there, but the one I use.
Hootsuite does it too. I've done it with Hootsuite.
Exactly.
I mean, anything
if you've got even like any social media management tools, you might be surprised at being able to like at least export your comments. If you haven't tried to, at least try to. If you do have a social media management tool, these tools do a lot that we don't realize a lot of the times. So essentially, yes, you have an Excel spreadsheet or a database of your preference. And what you start doing is kind of tagging sentiment, right? So you need to like figure out positive, negative, neutral. Majority is going to be neutral. Neutral is like a repost of information. It's people asking a question, right? A question isn't positive or negative. So the majority is usually neutral. So what you want to do is start zeroing in on negative. Then you can kind of, if there's thousands of records, depending on how much data you have, basically you can start to narrow down by just kind of skimming and like seeing like, okay, I've seen 3 people mention price. So maybe I need to do a search for price or anything price. And that's where you get into like the fun little Boolean approach of searching. So that's a whole different.
Oh, Boolean, yeah. So Boolean is how many of you?
Boolean, if you're from Missouri, apparently.
Boolean, yeah. So how many have used a Boolean search before? Do you know what we're talking about? Okay, so can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's basically a fancy Google search, right? So it's between every word that you want. It's an and or an or. So if I want Cami and Sherry, so that tells you any post that has both Cami and Sherry, or Cami or Sherry, then you're going to get twice as much information because it's either Cami or Sherry. Then you can do, near. I could do Cami and Sherry near winter.
Well, it is Valentine's Day, so yeah, the Valentine's Day would be near.
Near. I can even say like Cami plus Sherry, and then like near 25, which means 25 characters, the word social shows up. So it gets real fancy, it gets real complicated. There's some really long Boolean queries. If you think about the most important one sometimes in social listening being the not.
Yes.
Because
you'll pull a lot of data back. So when you do these Boolean searches, what'll happen is you'll get this buckets of information, and some of it's it's clearly not on target. So you would add the not in. So sometimes I start with a full one and then go narrow it down. Do you do that?
I do indeed.
Okay, tell us about that.
Essentially, okay, I'm going to give you some concrete examples. I know I've been talking conceptually a lot, so I'll give you a little more examples. So I was trying to do, I have a favorite furniture store, CB2, right? I'm obsessed. And I drop into the store just to see stuff, even if I'm not buying. So I basically was like, well, let me see what's online about them and their design crew and that kind of thing. So I go in there to build my query. Well, CB2 at the time, this was last year, was the name of Cardi B's new album. It is a football position, cornerback. It is a medical term. CB2 is in a lot of medical stuff. So my not, so I was like CB2 or at CB2 or hashtag CB2 design. And then all of a sudden it's like not everything that, yeah. So there's a painstaking process of filtering those out. And this is where DTAG's sort of industry, at least an industry filter would get you a step closer because it's only going to categorize by retail, right? So Cardi B's album would maybe, go away a lot. But anyways, like the medical terms would have dropped out at that point, right? Because we would have filtered by industry. So anyways, that's kind of what we're talking about when it comes to filtering. There's noise, right? Oh, that's another thing I really want to talk about real quick. One statement, which is social data can drive you crazy if you are a type A data analyst who needs exact numbers, who likes math. This is a directional data. so a lot of people feel uncomfortable. I'm like, I live in ambiguity. Give me ambiguity all day long. But like, when people talk about this as a data science, it's a different type of data science. And that's exactly why I call myself an anthropologist.
It's a social data science.
It's social data, right? So it's a little bit squishy, and you really have to get comfortable putting quantitative numbers on qualitative data, right? You're never going to get, there's 20 exact negative things about this exact topic, because you're never going to get all of them. And you're going to get a lot more than you even, when you throw a net, you're going to pull in a lot of other stuff. And you just have to be directional about it. But the thing is, you can very, very clearly, with those qualitative approaches that I've given you in your handout, move the needle. So what you start to see is, and it happens quicker than you think. I think some people think, oh, I need 6 months of data. I've seen this. I've seen sentiment about a brand change after a campaign drastically. We're talking massively. So we saw a negative trend going up, and it was a risk issue. It was really important. Then we saw a campaign hit, and we saw that topic literally tank. So it was 3xing in 1 month, and then all of a sudden it died completely. So you can actually see the effects of your campaign and your messaging on your brand sentiment.
And that is measurement.
That's measurement.
That is really good measurement. So one of the things we were talking about is your framework. So could we talk a little bit about your framework, your AIM framework? Let's kind of dig into that. So it's a way to think about this that might help you get your hands around it a little bit more.
Absolutely. So the AIM is just analyze, implement, measure. So it's a what are they called? Acronyms. I've worked for the government.
How many 3-letter acronyms do you know? That's my question. Can we search for that?
I've
Sherry plus acronym.
You could actually.
Okay, good.
Oh, that might be scary. Anyways, the acronym AIM is analyze, implement, measure, and Cami did help me come up with that like cute little AIM thing, which I was like, that's brilliant. I'm looking for target audience, like perfect. So thank Cami for that. And analyze is just kind of that piece I was just telling you about. It's going and finding your comments, going and finding, kind of perfecting your search of being able to find this content and information and pulling it down. So the analyze really kind of points you at the right data sources that you need. Implement is how you take that data and interpret it to know what to do, right? So if you think about my career, starting out in, well, not starting out, but like mid-career when I was Department of Defense, it was actions that were, out of data. They don't want information. They need like, what do we do about it, right? So what you want is to deliver the action and then back it with the data. So that's what you're kind of looking to do, is get to that action part. So what we're doing is we're taking the learnings, I just do sometimes top performing content this week for some of my TEDx content. I do content for TEDx Belltown Women. Every week I go look at I look at 3 things. I look at generally what's trending about women empowerment. So like women supporting women in business, that kind of thing. And I look at like what's got the most engagement for the past 7 days. And then I see some trends or I see some stuff and then I just jump on those, right? So I just use the content, use the hashtag that's being used and jump on that wave. So that's kind of what we're talking about in like the broader sense. So that's something that you can look at, is like what's happening in sort of an industry or a niche that you're trying to get to. Secondly, your comments. And thirdly, the other brand data that you've pulled down. You want to kind of get to what's hooks. So think about hooks. Hooks is the first second of anything you see. What makes you stay? And that can be different depending on what content type you're using, right? It's a video, like one of my videos for TEDx that went the most viral was, I did this research and it was like the top content about this subject was very close to the camera, very well lit, and started with a really personal sentence. And so I did that, and you can go look at the TEDx Belltown Women TikTok account, and it's like, it's above all the other posts because I use kind of like that really deep methodology. So we're looking at the top performing content. Once you isolate that, you want to look at the hooks, you want to look at the composition, you want to look at the message, the words they're using, and you want to look at who's engaging. So those are the things you want to consider. And out of that, then you can start crafting your content pretty quickly, honestly. Because at that point, it kind of writes itself. You're like, okay, so I need a face in the camera, or I need a graphic that says, for me, when I'm doing like my ads, which I've just launched my whole campaign, which is exciting, on LinkedIn, what works best is, and I've tried several things, you kind of got to like throw some spaghetti at the wall here. I tried a few things, narrowing it down to like what I was seeing working. And within the second post, I figured it out. Like it was very sharp difference once I applied that methodology.
So what was the methodology?
So it was, yeah.
We all want to know.
So it was just that. It was basically like looking for a topic in whatever platform, searching that topic, looking at like the top engaged content, and then analyzing that content. It's that simple. It is really simple.
And so tell me what your actual hook was.
So my hook for LinkedIn is very different from my hook from Instagram, is very different from my hook from TikTok.
Okay.
I'm finding this is just 2 weeks of data analysis of like looking at what performs well, trying it, and then iterating once, and then kind of seeing it. So LinkedIn, very much like what I'm offering on the first slide, like monthly reports for PR and brand reputation subscription, like that. And then it was like a little like dinky, you guys will see it if you look at my LinkedIn, like cartoons playing with each other. And I always go with the thought that like a human's face is what works best. On LinkedIn, no. On LinkedIn, no.
Interesting.
So people need to know what you're selling up front. So that's what I'm seeing is like we're talking 10x difference in my performance. So Instagram, it's a combination of, you know, catchy sort of imagery, depending on what it is, or your face. But TikTok is definitely your face, and it's real unique based on your industry, what that composition of your face is. So even though it just looks like I'm like in the camera like this, that's data driven, I promise.
Yeah. No, it's fair because it's different on every platform for sure. And everybody always says that, but barely ever has the data to back it up. So I think that's really interesting. So on Instagram, are you doing like, I mean, on Facebook, LinkedIn, all these kinds of things, are you doing video here, or what are you doing here?
Here,
like what kind of content?
All kinds of content types. So that's another sort of, if you look at the measurement piece that I've sent out to you guys, it shows by content type. So it's a great question.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about format and content type is, you know, video, carousel, photos, that kind of thing. Content types are inspirational, informational, performative, like that kind, or sorry, promotional. And so that if you can tag them by that, then your kind of research takes a different approach. If you already have your content types that you regularly put out, you can use those to do your research. And you know, we're usually doing bulk content, right? So you're going to be wanting to do more than one post. But if you've got that access, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
You're good.
So if you've got access to that, basically to look at, and I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Oh, your content types.
Yes, your content types. So once you have the types of content you want to create, you want to search by that, right? So if you're looking for, to me, if I'm looking for inspirational content, I don't care what the format is, right? I'm just looking at what's performing well. This week it was a Pinterest post, inspirational Pinterest post, and it was just a screenshot. So just recreate that, you know, and put a different spin on that message if possible, or whatever you need to do to like ride that wave. Then other ones, it's been like a video of another sort of agency owner like Cami, and like something that I'm seeing her doing that's excellent, and I'm starting to see a pattern in like, oh, when she does this, that works for her. So like, what works for me? What's my version of that? You know. So we're not talking about copying. We're talking about looking at the underlying theme of what's happening. Like, what is it about that person? You can't be that. We're all unique. You can't be anybody else. It's about finding your own version of whatever that is. So that's why, please put aside comparing yourself when you're doing this research. Just don't do it. It is an easy trap to fall into, but every single one of you has a unique thing to offer, and you just need to make sure that you're putting other people's content or techniques that work into your own interpretation of it.
Right, and then seeing what works. Like you said, it might just end up being a slide and not even your face, which is crazy, right? Because you think, you know, I want to connect with people. mean, I definitely would think that. And so that's amazing. So the third part of the framework then is measure. So
Yes. So
can
I
you
talked a little
no,
bit
it's
about
okay.
that, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying so that we got walking through it again.
Analyze.
Implement.
Is where you're taking the analysis and creating your content, right? It's the creation piece. And then measure is, post-launch, we all know what measure is. So what I've put in your handout is a way of kind of looking at all of that next to each other. So you can start to say, for my inspirational content, a single slide with flowers in it is getting the most engagement.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to track on a spreadsheet or database or even in your social media manager, if you've got one of those, just put in your notes like what those elements are. Keep track of like what's in each post. So then you can start to see, oh, for my promotional content, exactly what I learned. My promotional content, wow, I thought it was going to be a bit gauche to just put like, hey, I'm selling this, buy it. That's what's working. So again,
have you gotten clients out of that?
I just launched, literally like 2 weeks ago.
So today we're going to get clients out of today.
I've gotten leads, put it that way.
Yeah, I bet you have. So let me just talk a little bit about that. So I feel like that with this group, maybe many of you can't even afford a tool. You're like, I can't afford a tool. Even a little bit of data helps, doesn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
do you have to have reams and reams? How much data do you need in order to make this work?
Honestly, if you think about like what I just told you, it's just sort of snooping around online, and we can all get a sense of something. And make no mistake, these tools are not magic, boxes that tell me everything. The AI does help. It did make my job much easier. It was easier because what it does is you can isolate 1,000 posts, and it's going to give you an AI bubble that says, here's a summary of what's going on in these 1,000 posts, which is great. But again, it's AI. It's not perfect. So you really have to like trust but verify. So you kind of have to go in and look. So I'm doing manual work, even using these super fancy platforms. There's still a human element that has to take place because every single...
Well, hello.
We're having a party.
We are. That's CapCut, guys. I don't know why CapCut just started. It just touched.
Is that my walk-off music?
No. CapCut? It's CapCut. I'm running a video over here and it just flipped over to CapCut. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, go ahead.
So very little data is needed for this. If you guys, like I said, even like the stories and clicks, taps forward and back, just taking, I mean, it was not much data at all to work with, but it was enough for me to see a pattern.
Yeah. And so just kind of leading into that, because I've done this too with very little resources. One of my clients was an NGO, and they wanted to see how people were talking about women that have been abused by their partner in Africa. So they didn't want any US data. They didn't want anything else. So we used Hootsuite, which they already had because they were using Hootsuite anyway. And there was a campaign at that time for this particular issue. So we wanted to hear how people were talking about it. So we used that hashtag, pulled everything out of Hootsuite. I didn't have D-tag, sorry. So I took that, I put it into AI, and I had AI reorganize it for me and come up with a list of things that they were talking about and how they were talking about different things. We used Boolean search too, but I'm just saying, really interesting because it was very low budget, like really low budget. And it was just Excel documents but we did put it just at that time, I mean, directly into AI. This was a year, almost 2 years ago now. So not even as cool of tools as you have now. And so much insight came out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, just knowing how people are talking about it, and what they want to know is, will that person go and tell the police about their issue?
Yep.
And the answer was in most places, no, because they're afraid of they're afraid of their partner. They're afraid of what the police will do because the police will not help them. So it was really interesting. So those kinds of things are really easy to get. And I think, we had 1,000 lines of data.
Wow. That's a lot of data.
It wasn't a little, but I mean, it was a huge international hashtag conversation. So like if somebody's having a conversation around a hashtag, you can actually learn a lot from that. But you may think you know what they're saying, but I'll tell you what, like once you pull it down and put it into the research, sometimes you only see what you see. Like, if you have like 5,000 tweets going by you at a time, you'll be like, okay, I can't I can't quite
I'm so
wrap
glad
my
that
head
you
around
just
this.
said that. Can
Okay.
I jump off on
Yeah,
something?
it's a question for me. So how do you manage that? Yeah.
This is where I get to a super, super passionate subject of mine, which is diversity in analytics. Because essentially, there is no cheat code for Cami being able to know how every person out there is talking about this topic. That's why hashtags are valuable, because it's the one universal thing that we all do to tag content, right? Otherwise, essentially what you're looking at is, sorry, I got distracted. So remind me where I was.
Okay, yeah. We were talking about why you're passionate about this idea of
Diversity and
and
analytics.
analytics.
So
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
So
And no cheat code.
every single time, yeah. So I'm from Missouri. I'm clearly Caucasian, and I'm Gen X. So I have my preconceived notions of how people are talking about something. So if you think about step one, we're at failure, because step one I'm telling you to go do is search. For what? Like, if you don't know that there's a slang term for this thing that you're looking for, how would you know that, right? So the number one thing about social listening is you don't know what you don't know. And that's always a rule, because I find that I have a strong network of international friends and coworkers, and the ability to do all this interpretation, and I do my research. And if I'm doing a report for at one point a Nigerian office in Nigeria that was talking about something about trending beverages online. So I interviewed, like everyone Nigerian I could find, and said, like, what matters. And it's totally different, like the signals of what's in a Facebook photo in Nigeria, it sends so many signals that I, as a Midwestern white lady, would never understand. So or never even catch or see. So when I'm talking about thread pulling, even though you're pulling the data, it's every time I brought a new person, whether she's the same demographic as me, but every time I brought a new person to the table in general, but especially when I started adding diversity to those analysts, we got equal number of new insights from each new person, because they added more words and had more context and knew more emojis and knew more,
they knew what they meant.
They knew that
It was
Chicago to
the
Houston
same thing
was
with
different.
It was the same thing with this NGO. Like, we had the teams from the country look at this. For example, in Nigeria, speaking of which, we found a group of men that were meeting on a regular basis to talk about this. And they were like, wow, like, this is not normal. Like, they were like, this is great. So I'm just saying that I thought, oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Isn't that nice? This group of men meeting. That's how cool is that? Yeah. They're like, no, you have no idea what this means.
Yeah, the language and the context. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Is obviously you got to start somewhere, but don't be afraid to ask your friends and family. Like, I've built queries. My husband's British and he played rugby, and I've built like queries and just interviewed him and all of his friends and been like, hey, how do people in England talk about this? Like, what do you guys say? So,
and I'm really lucky to have 3 teenagers at home. So I've actually interviewed them at length. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. They're like, Mom, no, it's not good. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, great. We have time for questions. So I'm going to open up that floor right now. Hey, Miss Alexandra, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Yes. You're going to get a mic. We're going to send it over.
Sorry, it's Human X Analytics, and there's a little tiny story about that. When I first started, I was going to focus only on government work, so I was trying to get a real government-y brand. And then I expanded and decided not to limit to just government work. So Human is kind of like the space I was going to try to go into, or focus on, I should say. But then when I expanded, it didn't really make as much sense. So HXA, that's the human variable.
I just put up her QR code. So those who are in the room, you can actually grab that really quick. And those who are online, Tori's going to put it up for you right now so you can see it. So take a screenshot or pull out your phone and grab this, because you want this resource. And I really appreciate you for giving it to us.
Of course. Thank you, Cami.
Data geek, so I love what you've been talking about. The question I have is, it seems that what I've heard, and tell me if this is true or not, people are moving off of the public social platforms because of the toxicity. And so they're moving into spaces like Discord or Facebook groups, and that's where they're giving out their true opinions. And, Gen X are here. I don't post my opinion online, never have, because, fly under the radar. exactly for that reason. So how are we able to continue getting that data as people move off more into private spaces?
Great question. There's no perfect answer to that. This industry, even being on the tech side, is crazy, because like, think about how often Facebook and Instagram changes their API rules. Like, we get we get adjustments on, oh, we're not getting stories anymore, that kind of thing. Like, it changes all the time. So to answer your question, it's a blended effort. First of all, you got to make sure that you're not breaking any rules. You got to read the terms of service. At the bottom of it, like Glassdoor, we get a lot of questions about Glassdoor. So make sure you're reading the terms of service on a website before you actually scrape it. Now, copy and pasting like you did, no one's going to stop you. So there's manual work involved if you have access. But in terms of relying on social listening technology, you're really at the behest of whatever platform you've bought. And every platform has slight variances in that. So you really want to make sure that you're asking about specific data sources. And sometimes they'll go get them for you for a fee. Sometimes if I had a one-off where I don't need Glassdoor data every day, but I do have a use case here that I need it. So we did like a one-time poll for like $700 or something like that. So that's platform-based. Non-platform, obviously you're doing it manually anyways, so you're going to find that information. But again, another nuance that I want to make sure is understood is social listening is only publicly available information. It's never like my personal Instagram is private. It can't get to any of that information. My posts aren't going to show up on somebody's social listening report for my personal account.
Yeah. I want to just dig into that just one more second, because I wanted you to talk about your anthropology part of this, which is really about joining communities and observing them. So one of the things I've done for many years is join and observe communities, even not go to sell to them to a Facebook group, but like join them and actually observe them. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. When I first, I said I was kind of doing a social media app on the side, and back in 2013, 14-ish, it was sort of a passion project. And I was living in uptown Dallas, which is like 30 and below. And I was not in that age group. And I was trying to develop it. And the first thing I learned when I was like, oh, I've got a great idea for an app, was I started building it for myself, and very quickly realized you got to build for whoever's buying it. And I realized I had a lot to learn about millennials at the time. And I always say, like, I studied millennial behavior like Jane Goodall did the chimpanzees. Like, I was like at basketball games watching over people's shoulders, like, what are they doing? What app are they on? How much time are they? I didn't care about what they were saying or anything like that, but I'm looking at behavior. Like, behavior is all I cared about. So to your point, basically caring about behavior, like, think about all of this behaviorally. So I have joined many groups that I didn't know about because of social listening, like, to keep track of what's going on in that. Like, wow, there's an entire conversation happening about this topic that I didn't even know about. Again, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And back to garbage in, garbage out, these Boolean queries. Again, I say Boolean, whatever. I'm sure there's a correct way to say it, but they're going to pull in all kinds of content, right? So yeah, anyways, I'll stop talking about basically the diversity, but basically what you're trying to do is to get, sorry, I like completely.
No, you're good.
I thought you were trying to move on.
No, I'm not. You're like, oh, you're reading into this.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Remind me where I was.
You're going to you've gone into a lot of communities and spaces to watch them and make sure. And so
So behaviorally, you're watching what people are doing, and then that in turn, what it does is it makes you richer when you're then going to create content, because you then have another layer of behavioral understanding of, for example, millennials, Gen Z now. Again, I'm Gen X, but I identify as a millennial because I've done so much of this research that I kind of like talk like a millennial. My husband, who is millennial, acts like a Gen Xer online and in person. So like, it really is a behavioral thing, right? It doesn't always fall along those generational guidelines.
Any other questions?
It gets a a little crazy with AI.
In what way? Diversity?
Sorry, I'm curious about diversity and AI and all this information because I've been reading a little bit about how it biases against
Mhm.
certain things in a way that we're just oblivious to.
Great question, and that's a much bigger question. So an example of what you're talking about, late nights, I'm doing PowerPoint presentations and I search the word recruiter, and everything that pops up online is a little stick figure of a man with a tie. And it's a stick figure, it doesn't need a tie. You know, it's already ambiguous. Why are we putting ties on stick figures? But any business term that you search on Google, go try it. Any kind of like salesperson or whatever, it puts ties on stick figures and they're always light skinned. So that's happening in every platform we use. Be aware.
You can prompt for that. So there's ways to put a direction or a filter over that. Dove Beauty has an amazing tool, like just Dove Beauty, where they teach you how to prompt for diverse faces and types and bodies. And so I've done a lot of work around this. It's so just look up Dove Beauty program, and if you can't find it, come to me because I have it. But it's great. We have another question over there.
Hi, with so much misinformation and you got bots and you're trying to scrape, what are some techniques or tools that you use so that, there could be a whole bunch of people thinking one thing and it could be wrong, but you're trying to base it off of that opinion?
Yeah, great question. So if I'm honest, I know this is kind of crazy to believe because it is so vast, but bots and sort of like those trends or whatever, they pop up so fast because anything that has volume is going to show up louder on a dashboard. And anything that's sort of like even if it's like a little negative blip, I'm looking at all of those. And usually if it's repetitive, so if there's 60 posts of the exact same content, it either needs to be a retweet of, Steph Curry, or it's a bot. So you really want to kind of, and then you filter it out. So you just throw that into your not query and filter it out. And again, some platforms have stricter, limits on what they filter out automatically.
For example, X doesn't anymore. Like it'll just let whatever. But no, it's true. So it is. I mean, let's just tell the truth here. So I love what you just said there, because you almost can see the bots better if you do the research. So one of the things is we give too much weight to some of these bots that come on. I do work in this area. We see it all the time. The bot comes in, it says something very inflammatory around a specific political issue, one way or another. It'll come in and say that. And then the people who agree with that will fall in, like you, me, us, we're being played. I see it happen every day with some of my clients. I see people being played every day of my life. So I think it's really great to research this. This is great.
Yeah, so for bots specifically, there's bots that don't matter and there's bots that matter. So whether it's having an impact is also what you're measuring. So there were several times, most of the time I just filtered it out. It was irrelevant. It was just skewing my data. It was skewing my numbers, right? It was making something look more negative than it actually was, and no one cared. It was just 6 bot accounts. But then the case that Cammie's talking about where people did jump on, then at that point you really want to make sure that you're reporting it, first of all, capturing it, because that's a brand reputation issue and that goes up to risk. This is why you start to see, even though you're in marketing, you're doing risk, right? So I very rarely have I sat in marketing and only done marketing research.
Question? Any other questions from online? Nothing from online? Okay. Okay, well, then we're done. So I really appreciate all of you being here. Could we give a really big hand to Sherry for being here and talking to us? Make sure you get her, scan this. You can, Tori will put it up one more time for the people online. Get that information. That's good. Get that information because you did a really great thing for us by putting together a resource for you that you can use in what you're doing in your work. And so I'm really excited to use it myself. I'm excited to get on that. Also, just so you know, next month we'll be here again on the second Friday. We will be here at the Ion, like I said at the beginning. We are going to have another really cool speaker, and she's going to be bringing, I don't know if you've ever heard of DISC, the personality test. She's a DISC professional, and for people who are actually here in the room, she's bringing an actual code for you to do the DISC thing for free.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Speaking of behavioral insights.
I know. So if you're out there and you want to come to one, that would be the one to come to, because I can't give it to you guys out because she's bringing in an actual physical copy for people. So if you've never done DISC, you get to do it for free if you come here next month. And we'll be talking about how to use DISC and personality types to make content that speaks to different personality types and that kind of thing. So it kind of goes with this, but kind of a follow on. And hopefully we'll see you all here.
Yeah.
Thank you,
and
Sherry. Let's give
thank you
Sherry
so
a
much.
huge hand.
They already did.
And thanks for those who are there.